I storm out of my room and head down the hallway, the fear of losing my picture quickly turning to anger. Who the hell does General Walker think he is, ordering an agent to steal my picture? I'm going to march down to the cafeteria and make him give it back to me. As I pass by Tessa's room, she opens her door, but I keep walking. It isn't until she calls after me,
"Hey, wait up!"
that I stop and turn to face her. Tessa closes her door and jogs down the hallway to catch up with me, her hair still damp from showering. She has a smile on her face, but when she sees how angry I am, her smile disappears.
"What's wrong?"
Tessa asks me. I take a deep breath, trying to calm myself, but it's no use. Last night, I explain, I tried calling my mom from the room phone, but it was broken, so I wasn't able to get through to her. Then today, that same room phone, as well as a picture of my father and I that I brought with me, were both taken from my room while we were at training. I'm willing to bet that General Walker had something to do with that, so I'm heading down to the cafeteria to confront him. Tessa finally seems to notice just how worked up I am about this. She holds out her hands and calmly says,
"Josh, I'm sure there's a logical explanation as to why someone took your room phone and picture. But you are probably right about General Walker maybe knowing what happened to them. So I'll come with you to the cafeteria and we can calmly ask him if he knows anything about this, okay?"
Her calming tone should have been enough to put me at ease, but I still feel this burning ball of rage in my stomach that just won't go away for some reason. Even though I'm so attached to the picture of my father, I shouldn't be this angry about someone potentially taking it. That isn't really like me. However, the anger I feel over it being taken is just too overpowering and I can't think straight. Let's go, I tell Tessa. She follows me to the elevator and we both ride down to the lobby without speaking, although Tessa does give me the occasional concerned glances due to how mad I still am. When the elevator arrives at the lobby, the doors open and we make our way towards the cafeteria. I'm so concerned with confronting General Walker that I don't even wave back to the blonde receptionist. Tessa and I step into the cafeteria and I quickly scan the room to find General Walker sitting at the end of a table with a small group of agents, one of them being Price. I begin to walk towards the group, knowing that the best thing for me to do would be to just calmly ask him if he knows anything about my missing picture and phone. However, I'm so angry over what had happened that I can't even think straight, which seems silly because the matter isn't even that severe. "Hey General!" I shout loud enough for him to hear over the sounds of the other agents eating dinner. A few nearby agents look up from their meals to see why I had yelled, and then they continue staring at me in suspicion as I stand in front of General Walker. The General casually turns around to face Tessa and I, obviously oblivious to how angry I am because he politely nods at us. "Hello Josh, hello Tessa. How did the training go today?" he asks us. I shake my head in annoyance and decide to get straight to the point. There was this picture of me and my father that I brought with me when I came here. I set it on the cabinet in my room before I left for training today, and when I came back, it was gone, I tell him. I was expecting him to suddenly get nervous or angry that I'm confronting him about this, but instead, he just looks like he's trying not to smile. He must not realize I'm insinuating that he is somehow responsible for the missing picture. "Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Josh. I hope it turns up," he says. General Walker then turns back to the nearby agents he had been talking to and they resume their conversation. I can tell he isn't taking what I'm telling him seriously, which is starting to piss me off even more. I take a step closer to the table and stare at General Walker, who is sitting there smugly talking to the other agents like this matter is resolved. My anger grows even more inside of me until I can't take it anymore. Before I can stop myself, I wind up and punch the table. The sound of me hitting the table is so loud that it causes every single person in the room to stop what they're doing and look over at us. Almost every agent sitting around General Walker jumps to their feet and stares at me, waiting to see what I'm going to do. I look down at the table, and even though I had only meant to make a loud noise to get General Walker's attention, I ended up putting a hole through it. When I pull my fist away from the table, I notice that it is now so quiet in the room that you could hear a pin drop. I look across the table at General Walker as he stands up. The General stares back at me with a look of fury in his eyes, and I know that I've just made a huge mistake. However, it's too late to back down now. I look General Walker right in the eye, trying my best to ignore the room full of agents who are staring at me, and say, "Last night I tried to call my mother using the room phone, but the phone wouldn't work. I realized that you told me not to contact anyone, but I just needed to talk to her and make sure that she's doing okay." Then, the very next day, someone stole that same phone from my room as well as the picture of my father that I already mentioned. It seems a little suspicious that the one thing I can use to make contact with the outside world and the one personal item I have to remind me of my family were both taken at the same time. Now tell me that you weren't the one responsible for having them stolen from my room. General Walker's face turns red with rage. He takes a deep, shaky breath in an attempt to stay calm and then slowly says to me, "Now you listen to me, son. You have no idea what I've had to do to make it so that you and Tessa can roam around this base freely me instead of being thrown into a cell and experimented on. I have treated the two of you with as much respect and kindness as a person in my position could possibly show, and I've ordered every agent on this base to do the same. Now you tell me, why in God's name would I do all that just to steal some silly picture from you? I should probably listen to General Walker and back down, but I'm still so angry. There should be a voice in the back of my head telling me to apologize and let this go, but the only thing I can hear is my anger urging me to keep pushing this. Just as I'm about to ask General Walker again, a voice behind me yells, "Wait, stop!" Everyone turns to see a young man in a white lab coat and glasses run into the cafeteria. The man is probably in his mid-20s and has short brown hair. As he gets closer, I know that I've never met him before, and yet there's something familiar about him. He stops when he gets to us and says, "Josh, I'm the one who had your picture and your room phone taken." My anger finally begins to fade as it turns to confusion. I ask the stranger, "I'm sorry, but who are you and why did you take my picture?" The young man smiles. "I'm Connor Walker, the head weapons developer for this base." He's about to say something else when Tessa interrupts him.
Connor?
Connor notices Tessa standing behind me and grins at her. Tessa runs around the table to meet him and the two embrace. I notice that Connor's face turns a bit red as Tessa hugs him a little too hard. The two stop hugging and Connor says, "God, Tessa, I read about how strong you became, but I had no idea it was this strong." Tessa laughs as Connor looks at her lovingly. "It's really good to see you, Tessa."
What are you doing here? I thought you were working for some engineering company in Toronto.
Tessa asks him. Connor scratches the top of his head. "Well, the truth is, after I got my degree in chemical engineering, Dad offered me a job developing weapons, and I took it. I'm sorry for lying to you, but as I'm sure you're aware by now, the NRC is notorious for their secrecy." Tessa smiles at him.
It's all right. I'm just glad to see you.
She looks like she wants to ask Connor more questions, but before she has a chance, Connor turns back to me and says, "I'm also Tessa's brother and General Walker's son." "Yeah, I kinda guessed that," I say. My anger is now completely gone, and all I currently feel is embarrassment over how I acted in front of General Walker, Tessa's brother, Price, and roughly half the agents in the NRC. Connor reaches into the pocket of his lab coat and brings out a picture that seems to be freshly developed. "Here's your picture back," he says as he hands it to me. When Hank was in your room, he noticed that the picture was in rough shape, so he brought it to me to get it scanned and reprinted. As for the room phone, I believe that Hank took that down to his workshop to fix it. He is one of the nicest people on this base, but he has a terrible memory. I assume he forgot to mention that he took your picture and phone when you ran into him. I nod, but I'm too busy staring at the picture to respond. The formerly half-burned, faded image of me and my father that was covered in cracks now looks better than new. This picture means so much to me because it reminds me of a great memory I have of my father, and the fear that I might wake up one morning to find that the picture had turned to dust has been bothering me since I arrived at the base. I have no idea how to thank Connor for doing this. The only thing that I can think to say is, "Thank you." Connor smiles. "The image is now saved in a file on my computer, so if anything happens to this picture, just let me know and I can print you another." Now that my picture is back in my hands, I have something much worse to worry about. General Walker seems to have cooled down a bit since I had blamed him for stealing it, but he still looks like he wants to punch me in the face. I'm so sorry for the way I acted, General Walker. As much as I was hoping that he would forgive me, I did just yell at him in front of a room full of his agents. He slowly leans across the table so that his face is just inches away from mine. His expression is calm and collected, but the look in his eyes makes me want to run away. "If you ever disrespect me like that again, especially in front of my agents," he says to me, his voice barely above a whisper, but his tone is so terrifying that I wish he was yelling at me instead, "then I will lock you in a dark cell and throw away the key." Do I make myself clear? I'm so terrified that it takes me a second to find my voice. Yes, sir." General Walker sits back down and continues eating, while trying to ignore the large hole in the table right in front of him. Most of the other agents follow his cue and also sit back down to eat, but I can tell that they're still keeping a close eye on me. I turn to Tessa, and even though I don't have much of an appetite after all that, I ask her, "Do you want to get something to eat?" Tessa understands that this is my desperate attempt to get away from General Walker, so she says,
Yeah, sure.
As soon as we're out of earshot from General Walker, Tessa says,
That was really stupid.
"The last thing I want right now is a lecture about the mistakes that I just made, but I figure I'm going to get one anyway." "Yeah, it was," I tell her. "I don't know why I thought your dad stole my picture." Tessa shakes her head.
Not only that, but it was stupid of you to just walk up and start yelling at him in the middle of the cafeteria. Even if he did take it, you should have just calmly talked to him about it.
I nod in agreement. Yeah, that's definitely what I should have done, but For some reason, I was just so angry that it was hard to think rationally. Obviously, Tessa knows how this feels, so she decides to stop talking about what had happened. After we each grab a BLT sandwich and a side salad, we walk back over to the table where Jenner Walker and everyone else is sitting. Tessa and I sit at the far end of the table so that I'm as far away from Jenner Walker as possible. We eat in silence for a few minutes until Connor, who was sitting with Jenner Walker, comes over and sits next to Tessa. Once the two of you are done eating, he says, Jenner Walker wants everyone to head to my lab so I can show you some of the things that I've been working on.
What kind of things?
Tessa asks him. Connor grins. Some very cool toys. Tessa and I quickly finish eating, and as soon as we're done, Jenner Walker notices and gets up from the table. All the agents who were sitting around him, including Price, stand up as well, and they all begin walking towards the door. Connor, Tessa, and I get up after they walk by, and then we follow them out of the cafeteria. I make sure to follow a few paces back to avoid hearing any remarks about how I had acted from Jenner Walker or the other agents. Our small group exits the bunks and walks over to the 4 Jeeps that are parked out front. For once, Tessa and I don't ride with Jenner Walker, and instead jump into a Jeep with Connor that's driven by a random agent. All 4 Jeeps drive towards the office, the same building that Jenner Walker took us to yesterday to tell us about our abilities. I remember him telling us that the building is also where their scientists and engineers work, so I'm assuming that's where Connor's lab is. I wonder what other rooms are in the building. The 4 Jeeps come to a stop in front of the office, and everyone gets out. Our group then walks into the building and through the metal detector that's inside the door. Just like last time, I get a bit anxious as I walk through it, even though I don't have any weapons on me. However, the light turns green for me, just like it does for everyone else. So I step further into the building without any issue. Once everyone is past the metal detector, Jenner Walker leads us down the same hallway we had taken to get to the meeting room the night before. However, instead of walking all the way down to the end of the hallway, our group takes a sharp right down a different hallway that leads us to an elevator. The elevator is at least twice as big as the ones in the bunks, so everyone from our group is able to fit inside. Tessa and I are the last to squeeze into the elevator with everyone else, and as soon as we're in, an agent closest to the panel of buttons swipes his keycard and presses the number 12 button. Our group rides the elevator up in complete silence. I stand beside Tessa right in front of the door with everyone else behind me, so I can't read their faces. However, I can feel the tension in this crowded elevator, which tells me how a lot of these agents are nearly as angry with me over how I had acted in the cafeteria as Jenner Walker is. After what seems like forever, the elevator comes to a stop on the 12th floor and the doors open. Tessa and I get out first and then immediately step to the side to allow someone else to take the lead. Jenner Walker and Connor are the next to step out, followed by Price and all the other agents, and then Tessa and I once again follow the group a few paces back. As we keep walking, I immediately notice how different looking this floor is from the main floor of the building. It's essentially one long, well-lit hallway with steel-grated flooring. The walls of this hallway are made almost entirely of thick glass so you can see inside each lab. There are 6 different labs on each side of the hallway, and all of them are full of scientists in white lab coats who are either building tools and weapons, working with chemicals, or just sitting around computers doing some calculations. Most of the scientists just ignore us as we walk by, but there's one woman in the second lab on the right whose eyes go wide when she notices Tessa and I out in the hallway. The shocked woman nearly drops the beaker of chemicals she's working with. Our group stops in front of the last lab on the left side of the hallway. Connor steps forward and swipes his keycard in the slot next to the electronic glass door, and there's a whoosh of compressed air as it slides open. Everyone files into the lab, with Tessa and I being the last to enter. Seeing the labs from the hallway is one thing, but now that I'm actually inside one, I have to try hard to keep from smiling over how cool this is. Thanks to the abundance of overhead lighting, as well as everything in the lab being a polished off-white color, inside the lab is just a bit too bright for comfort. That doesn't stop me from looking around at all the tables and countertops in the room that are covered in partially disassembled weapons and technology that I don't recognize. On some tables off to the right sit a few things that I actually can identify, like some computer monitors, keyboards, a printer, and other standard office equipment. However, everything else in the room looks alien to me. There are also 2 black lockers against the far wall of the lab that look large enough for a person to stand inside. The one thing that really seems out of place in the lab is a video camera on a tripod in the center of the room. The camera is pointed at a table on the far side of the lab that's covered by a white sheet. All the agents are standing behind or beside the camera so not to block its shot of the table, so Tessa and I do the same. Connor and Jenner Walker break away from the crowd and stand in front of the covered table, looking like they're ready to deliver a big speech. Jenner Walker looks calm and collected as always, but Connor, on the other hand, has a massive smile on his face that makes it impossible for me not to like the guy. I still have no clue what all this is about, but I have a feeling that Connor has put a ton of work into it and is obviously very proud. One of the agents standing behind the camera steps forward, turns it on, and begins filming Connor and Jenner Walker. Connor clears his throat and says, "Thank you everyone for coming. As many of you know, my team and I have been working on a few new prototype weapons for the NRC. We have just recently finished developing the prototype models and I am very excited to unveil them to you." Connor grabs the sheet with both hands and yanks it off the table. With the sheet now gone, I strain my neck to see all the different weapons and objects scattered across the table. There are 3 identical pistols that look similar to the Glocks we used earlier in the firing range, a skinny metal cylinder about 30 centimeters long, 2 small black boxes, and 2 digital wristwatches. I can't even clearly make out what half the things on the table are, but I look around and see that all the agents are nodding their heads in approval. Like me, Tessa seems equal parts fascinated and confused by what she's seeing. "Alright everyone," Connor says. "I would now like to describe and demonstrate each of these items." Everyone looks away from the items on the table and gives Connor their full attention. Looking a little nervous but trying his best to hide it, Connor says, "Josh and Tessa, could you two come up here please?" Tessa and I exchange a surprised look. Out of everyone in this room, I figured the 2 of us would be the least acknowledged since we have no idea what's going on. However, we do as Connor says and timidly push through all the important looking agents standing in front of us to join him at the front of the room. Connor notices our confusion over being called upon, so he smiles at us and says, "As you two already know, NRC agents use electric rifles in combat. As incredibly effective as these weapons are, the design is slightly flawed, because they can only fire about 5 rounds before needing to be recharged by our fusion battery. Since the fusion battery is too large and valuable to be taken out of the base, the main flaw with these rifles is that they have a finite number of shots before they become virtually useless in combat." "Sorry, did you say fusion battery?" I ask him. "Yes," he tells me. "On the bottom floor of this building is a prototype fusion battery that myself and a handful of our best scientists and engineers spent the past 2 years creating."
How does it work?
Tessa asks. Connor hesitates and looks over at General Walker, as if to silently ask for his permission. General Walker nods, so Connor turns back to us and says, "Well, we based the initial design of the battery off the magnetic confinement reactor in France, but we were able to shrink the design down from the size of a building to the size of an office printer. Our fusion battery works by squeezing plasma in a donut-shaped chamber at speeds high enough that it fuses with other plasma, releasing enough energy to power this base and everything in it. In order for this to work though, the battery uses superconducting electromagnets that are cooled with liquid helium in order to make sure that the super hot plasma doesn't overheat. This process is fueled by deuterium and helium-3. Deuterium is easy enough to get our hands on since it can be found in seawater. However, helium-3 is much harder to get a hold of. Fortunately, we were lucky to be given enough of it to power this battery and potentially a few others like it for nearly a lifetime. So, 2 years and about $12 million later, we have a clean source of energy that may potentially be the key to solving the world's energy crisis if we can figure out how to make it feasible." "Cool," I tell him, barely understanding what he just said. Sorry, that may have been a bit more detailed of an explanation than what you two were looking for, but I'm so proud of our fusion battery and just love explaining how it works to people. Personally, I find it very interesting. "I can tell," I say, trying not to smile at Connor nerding out.
As incredible as this sounds,
Tessa says,
why are you creating electric weapons and fusion batteries? I thought the NRC was only responsible for making sure that no one is attempting to experiment with radiation or make nuclear weapons.
General Walker clears his throat and says, "The NRC is not only responsible for preventing any illegal experimentation with nuclear weapons and radiation, but we also develop new ways to use nuclear energy, such as this fusion battery. At the next United Nations meeting, they will discuss what they want to do with these batteries and all the other technology that our engineers and scientists have been developing. We are required to send the UN a video demonstration of all new weapons and technology we have developed ahead of this meeting, which is why we are filming this. With the UN being the ones who provide our funding, they need to know about everything we do since they also have final say in our most important decisions." I can hear a little bitterness in his voice as General Walker explains how the UN is responsible for the NRC's biggest decisions. It's obvious that General Walker is not a big fan of being told what to do by the UN. Connor continues his presentation. "Anyway, this fusion battery is how we charge all the electric rifles that our agents use. Now, because it is impossible for us to move the battery outside of the base, as it is far too heavy and valuable, we have been trying to create a battery small enough for the agents to take with them into combat. However, the closest that we've been able to get to this goal is creating a battery about a quarter of the size of our current design, but even this is still too heavy and impractical for our agents. So, when my team and I heard that the 2 of you were coming to the base, we knew that it would be the perfect chance to test out our prototype technology that can be powered by the low levels of radiation that the 2 of you give off instead of a fusion battery. This means that currently, you 2 are the only people that the technology on this table will work for." I turn my attention back to the table and ask Connor, "So if we're the only ones who can use this stuff, are you saying that it's ours?" He smiles. "Well, yes and no. This is your equipment because it was redesigned so that the two of you are the only ones capable of using it. However, we can't just have you walking around with these experimental weapons, so they will remain here when you are not testing them. I don't know how I should react. First, Connor gave me a brand new picture of my father and made sure that I will never have to worry about it being destroyed again. Now, he's basically giving Tessa and I this futuristic technology. I love this guy. Connor picks up the two small black boxes off the table and hands one to me and the other to Tessa. Open them, he says. Tessa and I open our boxes at the same time. Inside both of them are two tiny black metallic sticks roughly the size of paper clips. Put one behind each ear, Connor says instead of telling us what they are. I do as I'm instructed and put one behind each ear. Nothing happens at first, but then I feel along the side of the stick behind my right ear until I find a small button. I press it and the sticks begin to quickly expand out until they join together in the middle of my face, right over my eyebrows. Then, tinted glass folds down from the sticks and covers my eyes and makes everything look a shade darker. The sticks stop expanding and I'm left with a pair of really high-tech sunglasses. Wow, is the first word that comes out of my mouth.
Wow is right.
Tessa agrees. I look over to see that she had also transformed her sticks into sunglasses. The frames of her glasses are slightly more circular and a bit larger than mine, but besides that, they're basically identical. We call these multi-purpose protective combat sunglasses, Connor says. NRC agents already use glasses similar to these in the field that can see in night vision and can also detect different types of radiation. I stare at Tessa to see if there's any visible radiation coming off her, but I can't see any. Everything looks the same besides my vision being a bit darker. Connor continues explaining. These glasses are a huge upgrade from the outdated, bulky ones that NRC agents are currently using. First of all, they are made out of a thin titanium alloy, which makes the glasses virtually unbreakable. As you just witnessed, they can expand from those two small sticks and then retract back into them for easy storage. They allow the wearer to see in night vision, thermal vision, and x-ray vision, and are also able to monitor a person's radiation levels and vital signs. However, my personal favorite feature is that they have a special tactical mode that can scan the wearer's surroundings for any useful information. This will give the wearer a massive edge in any combat situation because the glasses are able to highlight things like enemy weapons, vehicles, explosives, and even relevant information inside nearby buildings and structures, such as an easily breakable wall or which electrical switch will open a garage door. All this sounds incredibly cool, but one thing that Connor said sticks out to me. These sound awesome, but the name is terrible. Do you mind if I call them something like, Atomic Shades? I ask him. Tessa nods in agreement and points at me.
That's a lot cooler.
Connor smiles and shakes his head. Call them whatever you want. He then reaches across the table and grabs the two watches. After turning them on, he brings them back over and shows them to the camera and agents watching before handing them to me and Tessa. You guys can take off those bracelets now, he tells Tessa and I as he hands us each a watch. It's time for an upgrade. I rip off the black bracelet that I've been wearing since the doctor gave it to me yesterday and set it on the table. Then I slide the watch onto my left wrist and examine it. It's all black with a large, square-shaped digital face, and for someone who hasn't worn a watch since I lost my plastic Spider-Man one when I was 9, I'm way more excited about this watch than I should be. I'm glad you like those watches, Connor says, noticing us examining them with impressed looks on our faces, because they will be how you control your multi-purpose atomic shades. Connor walks over to me, grabs my wrist, and presses his thumb to the screen of my watch. He then says, Combat Watch Model L Alpha, change user. He looks at me and whispers, say your name. I hold the watch up closer to my face and say, Josh Davis, feeling a bit stupid that I'm talking to a watch. Connor then gets me to scan my right thumb on the watch so that it'll know my thumbprint and nobody else will be able to use it. He is then about to walk over to set up Tessa's watch for her, but before he does, he turns around and tells me not to touch my watch until he says otherwise. I nod, but struggle to resist the urge to immediately begin playing with it when the screen lights up. After Connor finishes setting up Tessa's watch, he walks back over to the front of the table and faces the camera and group of agents who have been standing there waiting patiently. Now, Connor tells the camera, these watches may only look like any average wristwatch, but the technology in these watches is far greater than anything sold commercially and aids the watch's user in both combat and non-combat situations. It is my hope that these watches will become the standard issue for the NRC once we find a power source, other than the radiation Tessa and Josh give off, that is powerful enough for them to use. But until then, these prototypes will give you an accurate picture of what these watches can do. Tessa, Josh, could the two of you scroll over to the next page on the watches? We do as he says, and I find that the watch works exactly as my phone. I swipe my finger across the screen and it switches to a new page that shows my heartbeat and a few small green bars. This screen shows your heartbeat as well as the amount of radiation that you are giving off, Connor tells us. I've also spoken to Corporal Price, who asked me if I could make you something to monitor the force of your punch. So, whenever you throw a punch while wearing the watch, the force of that punch will come up on the screen. Now swipe over to the next page. As I'm about to swipe to the next page, I notice that a monitor mounted to the wall behind the table is showing larger images of our watch's screens. I had been so preoccupied with all the technology on the table that I hadn't even noticed the monitor until now. I guess Connor had that set up for the audience's sake since they aren't able to see our watches up close. I turn my attention back to my watch and swipe to the next page, which shows the words standard in dark print. Under standard are the words night vision, x-ray, thermal, radiation, and tactical. This is the page that controls your glasses, Connor says while walking away from the table towards a light switch by the door. He turns off the lights, making the room pitch black except for the faint glow of the monitor. Go ahead and try out night vision. Despite the darkness, I'm able to see the dim glow of my watch, so I press the word night vision. Immediately, everything turns a ghostly shade of green and I'm able to see again. I look around the room and the first thing I notice is that the monitor behind us has also turned green and is now showing the points of view of Tessa and I, so there must be a small camera in our glasses. I then turn to everyone else in the room to see the emotionless faces of all the agents who are staring at the monitor and waiting for the lights to turn back on. Connor is still standing next to the light switch and Jenna Walker stands off to my left. Even though it's tough to read his expression in night vision, Jenna Walker still looks annoyed at me. I finally look over at Tessa, who sees me looking at her with the help of her atomic shades and waves at me. As I wave back, I hear Connor say, "Try the other modes now." I tap the next button on my watch and change my vision to thermal. The ghostly green color of night vision vanishes and is replaced by a sea of red, yellow, and blue. I look back at Tessa, who is now just a blob of red, yellow, blue, and green in the shape of her body. Everyone else in the room looks the same as her, even though they aren't as red as Tessa, and I'm even able to see the heat signatures of all the scientists on this floor through the walls. After getting tired of that mode, I press the next word on my watch and switch my glasses to X-ray mode. I almost jump when I look down at my hands and find that I can see the bones right through my skin. Once again, I look around the room to find that all the agents now resemble the most realistic Halloween skeletons ever. I take a closer look at one agent in particular and notice that I can see the contents of his pockets. The agent shifts uncomfortably as he watches me do this on the monitor, and I quickly look away from him, slightly embarrassed. Radiation mode is also really cool because I hardly see anything when looking at the agents, but when I look at Tessa, I see a bunch of dark red waves coming off her. Then I notice that there are different colored waves coming off most of the weapons and technology in the room, but they're hard to see through all the dark red lines coming off me. The final mode is called tactical, and when I press that button, everything turns a light shade of blue, but then nothing else happens. I look around the room slowly, trying to see if the glasses would highlight anything important like Connor said they would, but nothing pops up. I hear Connor quietly curse from his spot beside the light switch, and then a second later, he turns the lights back on. I turn my atomic shades back to their standard mode as Connor walks back over to Tessa and I. Without saying anything, he takes the glasses off my face and carries them over to a nearby computer. He starts typing frantically for a few minutes before sighing loudly and walking back over to meet with the glasses. He hands them back to me while trying not to look deflated about something, but unlike his father, he isn't very good at hiding his emotions. Well, it seems that there are still a few bugs to work out with the tactical mode, but how did all the other modes look? Connor asks us. Everything else seemed to work really well. It was super cool being able to look around in different ways like that, and I can definitely see it being useful. I tell him, trying to play up my response a bit for the camera since the tactical mode didn't work right.
That's exactly what I was going to say,
Tessa adds. Connor smiles and claps his hands together. Excellent, he says. Now, if you'll swipe to the next page on your watches, I believe you'll see something that is of great interest to you, Josh. Now, even more excited than I already was, I swipe to the next page on my watch and find what looks like a normal page where you can access music on your phone. What's this? I ask Connor. Connor explains, well, we actually developed this page for something else that I'll explain to you in a moment. However, the other day, I added a way for you two to listen to your music on your watches. Josh Price came to me and mentioned how you like to listen to music, which I thought was awesome because music can help raise your adrenaline levels without making you angry, which is obviously something that we want to encourage. So I already uploaded a large variety of songs from different genres onto the watches, and if you lend me your phones, I'll be happy to upload your own music as well. Thank you, that sounds great, I tell him. But I lent my phone to a friend and haven't had a chance to get it back yet.
And I don't really listen to much music,
Tessa adds. I raise my eyebrows at Tessa and look at her with a shocked expression. It's meant to be playful because Tessa knows how much I love listening to music, but it probably isn't the best time because Jenna Walker gives me a dirty look. When I notice him looking at me, I change the subject by asking, can I also plug my earphones into it? Connor smiles. No, but it has Bluetooth that is connected to your glasses, so you can listen to music through the small speakers in your glasses. Now, that's the reason I knew you would like this page, but as I mentioned, it's not the main reason we developed it. He turns away from me and looks back at the camera. The main reason for this page came when we developed a revolutionary new sonic technology that we call the sound wave. Essentially, we created an algorithm that is able to take over any technology in close proximity that has a speaker and broadcast whatever message we want through those nearby speakers by using the watches. We actually used this same technology to broadcast a message of the incoming meteor to every phone in Montgomery High School. However, the sound wave device that we used was a lot more powerful than the ones in your watches. I'd been scrolling through the library of songs that are on the watch while Connor explained the sound wave function to the camera. After I find a song that I recognize, I press play and I can hear the song come through the speakers in my glasses. The song is pretty quiet though, so I press what I think is the volume button on my watch, but suddenly the song Kickstart My Heart by Motley Crue blasts through every speaker in the lab so loudly that the room begins to shake. Everyone covers their ears as I quickly turn off the sound wave function and pause the music, mortified by what I've just accidentally done. "Why the hell did you do that?" Jenner Walker yells at me after I shut off the music. I'm not exactly sure what to say, but luckily Connor answers first. Josh was just testing to make sure that the sound wave function works. I was actually just about to ask him to do that, but he beat me to it. Now you all know just how truly powerful it is. Jenner Walker takes a step back and seems to calm down. I realize that Connor is probably the only person who's able to put Jenner Walker at ease. Twice now, Connor has saved me from Jenner Walker's fury, and if it wasn't for him, I might already be in a jail cell. Besides using this function to play music, Connor says, there's a small microphone inside the watch that you can use to record a message that will come through all the nearby speakers. The watch is also able to use this function in reverse and can tap into any nearby speaker of your choosing so you can listen to what is being said around them.
That's amazing.
Tessa says,
Is there anything else the watch can do?
Connor looks at Jenner Walker out of the corner of his eye and Jenner Walker subtly shakes his head. Connor looks back at us and probably thinks we don't notice, but I do, and I'm pretty sure Tessa does too. No, he says, these are all of the watch's main functions. Now, why don't we take a look at everything else that's on the table? We all turn our attention to the 3 identical pistols that are lying on the far side of the table. Connor explains that, just like the electric rifles that NRC agents use, these pistols also fire electric bullets. However, the main differences between these pistols and those rifles are that the pistols are more durable, have a longer range, and have a gauge on the side of the gun to change how powerful the bullets are. The lowest level on the gauge makes the bullets about as powerful as a taser, and the highest level makes the bullets powerful enough to knock someone unconscious for up to 3 hours. The coolest thing about these pistols though is the fact that, just like everything else on this table, they're powered by the radiation Tessa and I give off, meaning they basically have unlimited ammunition. The final thing on the table is the small skinny silver pipe, which actually extends into a bow staff about 1.5 meters long. When the staff is fully extended, both of its ends crackle with blue electricity. Apparently the staff is capable of delivering an electric pulse powerful enough to knock anyone unconscious it makes contact with. As cool as I think the staff is, I keep wondering why anyone would need it when we have guns. However, I don't say anything because I notice that Tessa seems to be taking a special interest in the staff. I have absolutely no idea how these weapons are possible. While Tessa and I examine the weapons and hold them up for the camera to see, Connor explains that the concept for the staff and guns is based off just a simple taser. Basically, much like a taser, these weapons have a low electrical current but a high voltage, making them powerful enough to knock anyone unconscious who comes into contact with their electric currents but not too powerful to kill them. Connor also explains that, like the electric rifles, the electric bullets that the pistols fire are formed using small but powerful electromagnets inside of the guns that are used to mold the electricity into a bullet-like form. The electricity then maintains that form after it is fired until it hits someone or something. So why is it that the agents can't use these pistols? I ask Connor. Well, Connor explains, they actually can if the pistols are fully charged, but once they start firing them, the guns will quickly run out of power and need to be recharged. However, when the 2 of you are firing these guns, the pistols can continuously absorb your radiation to keep their batteries fully charged. That's actually more or less how all of this technology works. One final thing, all these prototypes are made of a special titanium alloy, meaning they're far stronger and more durable than anything our agents are currently using. The only downside to this technology is that because everything is powered by your radiation, you can't use the pistols or staff for extended periods of time. As long as you are just wearing these weapons or keeping them in your close proximity, they will stay fully charged while absorbing enough of your radiation so you won't be harmful to the people around you. However, once you begin continuously using these weapons for a certain duration of time without stopping, they will be forced to consume more and more of your radiation to stay charged, which will tire you very quickly. In combat, this could be considered a benefit because you two will most likely be giving off more radiation when your heart is pumping and your adrenaline levels are high, but I would still advise taking a break from using them every once in a while just in case. Connor turns away from us and seems like he's about to deliver a conclusion to his presentation when he suddenly remembers something. He looks back at Tessa and I. Also, I almost forgot. There is, what some would argue, a minor side effect to these weapons. Since they are powered by radiation, they will magnetically stick to any source of radiation, making it difficult to separate the weapons from the source. In this case, the two of you are the sources. So normally, I would say that it may be difficult to draw your weapons without a struggle, but I'm confident that you two are strong enough so this won't cause you any problems. The upside to this is that it will make it difficult for anyone to disarm you. I decided to test what Connor is saying by holding one of the pistols close to my chest. Sure enough, it sticks to me like I had just swallowed a magnet. I then pull the pistol off me and set it back on the table without any difficulty, although I do feel the slightest bit of resistance. Jenner Walker takes Connor's place at the front of the room. He faces the camera and says, "Thank you for taking the time to watch this demonstration. We will get back to you when further testing is done with these prototypes." As soon as he says this, the agent behind the camera turns it off and gives Jenner Walker a thumbs up. After that, most of the agents begin shuffling out of the room, with only Price and a few others staying behind to speak with Jenner Walker and Connor. Tessa and I stand off to the side a bit awkwardly, wondering if we should stay here or just leave. Thankfully, those last few agents don't stay too long and they all leave the room after a few minutes. Price gives Tessa and I a friendly nod as he walks out the door, leaving just Jenner Walker, Connor, Tessa, and myself in the lab. "Excellent job on the presentation, Connor," Jenner Walker tells him. "I have no doubt that the UN will decide to fund each of your prototypes." It's a bit weird hearing Jenner Walker sound like a normal father. He acts so serious and uptight all the time that I didn't know he was capable of sounding so friendly and encouraging.
I agree. You did a really great job.
Tessa adds. He smiles at her. "Thanks, Tessa." I want to say something encouraging too, but I don't really know what the right words are since I still don't know Connor very well. Instead, I just ask, "So, are you going to want all this stuff back?" Tessa and I are still wearing the watches and atomic shades, though we had deactivated the glasses a few minutes ago, so they are now in stick form behind our ears. Connor looks over at me and smiles. "No, you two can keep the watches and glasses. However, everything else will remain here since they are only to be used for combat and training." "Understood," I say, a bit disappointed that I don't get to carry one of the guns around with me. Jenner Walker gives Tessa and I a stern look and says, "The two of you are being given the chance to use these prototypes because Connor wants to test them to see if he and his team need to make any alterations to them. This means that this technology is your responsibility. The glasses and watch are to be on you at all times. Do you understand?" Tessa and I both nod, and with that, the four of us walk out of the lab. Connor hangs back with us a few paces behind Jenner Walker and then whispers, "Listen, you guys don't need to be wearing the glasses and watch 24/7, but they do absorb your excess radiation, so it is a good idea to wear them as often as possible. And don't worry, this stuff is so cool, I don't think I'll ever take it off," I tell him. Connor grins. "That's why I'm glad the two of you are the ones who get to test it."